أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Ramadan Mubarak. We are in Alhamdulillah, we're in the 12th day of Ramadan. It really seems like it's flying by. As quickly as it comes is as quickly as it goes is what it seems like. And we must take the opportunity to hold on to it before it goes. We must seize the moment. We don't know if we're going to see and live to see another Ramadan. So many have come before us and have died before they were able to see this Ramadan. We're never guaranteed it, so it's always better late than never. If you know you haven't had the opportunity to do what you wanted to do this Ramadan, if you weren't able to read as much Quran as you wished or do as much ibadah as you had wished, it's always better late than never. This um, we don't know which deeds are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to accept. So if we fall into this notion that, I didn't start at the beginning, this is a falsehood that we must remove from our mind. It's a bad mindset. And we should s- start now if we didn't start already. So all of Ramadan is centered around the idea of sacrifice, meaning we are sacrificing our um, the food, the water, all of the different things that we normally do in our lives. Coffee, whatever it may be, all of these things that we take as luxuries, we're now sacrificing for the sake of Allah. We're doing this um, you know, it would seem to our own detriment, right? So if we're just looking at what is in front of us, we're not eating as much, we're not drinking as much, we're not, sustaining ourselves in the same way, that it would seem to someone else, an outsider, that this is to our detriment. But we know as Muslims that it's not, that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking for us, and Allah subhanahu, we know that the reward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to grant us. And last week we had talked about a lot of about habits and our negative desires, how we fall into our negative desires, we create bad habits, and that this Ramadan we should make the most of it by abstaining from things to lead us to bad habits. And this all ties back to sacrificing. We're sacrificing our nafs, our desires. We're sacrificing them for the sake of Allah. In Surah Tawbah, ayah 111, it says that Allah has indeed purchased from the believers their lives and wealth in exchange for paradise. So, to us, it may seem like giving up these desire. It seems like it's a transaction, this giving up of the desires of this worldly life in general is a transaction that we're making with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we know that we don't own anything truly in this world. Our wealth, our homes, everything, our families, all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't actually own anything. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So I was saying in the Surah Toba, this ayah is referring to us giving up our freedoms to make a choice. Allah, the only thing Allah really has given us is this freedom to choose that He has not granted to any other creature, um, besides the jinn. But this freedom to choose is what we're truly giving up. We're, our choice in our life is what we're giving up. We're giving up the ability to choose something that is outside of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for us. Because a lot of these things seem like they are tempting us. They are tempting us. Our nafs is pulling us away from in any direction. Our desires are pulling us away in every direction away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we kind of see this in the world today. All the people that have issues, they have problems, they have essentially inclined to their desire. And that's why a lot of the problems we see are rooted in this following of desire. And we are living in an age of instant gratification, of hedonism, meaning that we are chasing after what gives us pleasure. This pleasure is how we measure our happiness. We're not truly happy if we're not feeling the pleasure, you know. And many of especially the non-Muslims in the world, and all of even Muslims fall into this, unfortunately. But we measure our happiness and our success by the pleasures that we're feeling. So we seek to satisfy these pleasures and desires in order to reach that state of happiness. And this causes a diminishing return where the same thing that made us happy before no longer makes us as happy anymore. So we have to go into lower and lower depths in order to satisfy desires. And we can see that even now with the the release of the Epstein files. A lot of the underbelly of our society has been further exposed. People are not able to control themselves. They lack this self control, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has humiliated them in this way. And Allah is promising that those that do not follow His way, they will be humiliated, whether it be in this world or in the hereafter. This humiliation is guaranteed. This is promise of Allah is real. So, those who wish and those without the means to attain the pleasure, let's say these people uh, all have means to attain the pleasure. They have wealth, they have time, they have their youth and their health. They can use all these things to attain the pleasure. But those that do not have the means, whether they don't have their wealth, they have to go out and steal or cheat others in order to attain it, the means to the desire of the world. So this is the state of those who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are in this constant chasing and chasing of in a circle where they will never find a way out. And without building this connection with Allah and sacrificing, there will never be a way out. And I wanted to share a story about sacrifice from one of the Sahaba that I had read recently. And this was one of the Sahaba. He was a slave to a woman named Ammar, who was looking to have someone help her out with her chores and also get a source of income. He was essentially an apprentice blacksmith. And around the age of 16 to 18, he had heard about Islam and it made sense to him and he accepted it right away. He went to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and declared his submission and pledged to him. And his name was Khabbab. And Khabbab, he was a black slave, and but he was a black Arab. And and as soon as they had found out that he had submitted and he had allied himself with Prophet Muhammad SAW and accepted Islam, as soon as they found out, the family of his owner had beat him so severely that he became unconscious, bleeding from his wounds. They used the same iron that he would use for his blacksmithing to burn him, the same iron that was part of his craft that made his master so profitable. So they continued to beat him again and again. When he gained consciousness, he still refused to denounce his belief and to denounce his Islam. They continued to beat him relentlessly, starved him, and experimented with many different forms of torture. They threw burning hot coals on his back, and with the sizzling of his flesh, it melted off his body. He screamed in pain and anguish, but there was no one to come to protect or defend him because this was the early days of Islam. There was no means, there's no political or, you know, military means for them to defend each other. They couldn't do anything. And upon seeing him speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, again on a later date, Umar tortured him herself. His own, the master tortured him herself by running a red hot iron comb through his scalp and burning his skin. He endured all this torture by himself for the sake of Allah. Eventually, Abu Bakr offered to purchase him from Umar, and he became a freed man. So once in his time of frustration, you know, because even though he became a freed man, it didn't free him from the persecution of the non-Muslims and the Quraysh. He was so frustrated because of all of this that he had to go through and the other Muslims had to go through. He asked, O Messenger of Allah, aren't you going to ask Allah to help us? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sat up, noticeably angered, and replied, people before us were tortured more than you, yet they didn't abandon their religion, right? Allah will surely give victory to this deen, but you are hasty. So this is a reminder for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that the believer must always be patient, hopeful, and confident in Allah's plan and His help. His help will surely arrive. He told him that they may not live to see the victory of this deen, but it will surely come. So later, obviously, Islam was successful, and Khabab, you know, they were able to see this success of Islam. They lived long enough. And later, when Umar became the caliph, he and Bilal and Khabab would remember all the hardship and all the torture that they had to go through. And Umar praised Khabab and Bilal for all they did for Islam. Umar had seen many tortured in his lifetime, but none as much as Khabab. And he saw the flesh still, none when he saw his flesh still raw and on his back, unhealed. So the promise of the victory, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, was made to him years before it was fulfilled and he was able to see it. And when he finally passed away, upon passing his grave, Ali radiallahu anhu once said, may Allah have mercy on Khabbab. He embraced Islam wholeheartedly. He performed the hijrah in full obedience. And he spent his whole life striving in the way of Allah. He suffered in ways no one else had suffered. And surely this is his reward is with Allah. So this sacrifice is something that he had to go on, not in secret, but on his own. There was nothing, and no one to share his pain with. And it's should be something that we reflect upon and what all of the early Muslims had to go through in order to bring this deen to us and to make this deen what it is. These people had sacrificed so much, and those same burning coals that he had felt on his skin, the way they felt on him, this, what we do in our lives, even though we never experienced something as bad as this, it might seem to us in our minds that it is just as bad when we have to fight against our nafs and our desires. We feel this burning sensation in our hearts, and it's something that will never be defeated and will never go away truly. It will always come back and try to tempt us. And especially now, I want to speak briefly on the sacrifice that we must make as a ummah for each other. And today, more than ever, we're seeing so much difficulty, so much trial and tribulation around the world. We must remember that only when we hold on to the rope of Allah will we be successful. We must hold on to this rope of Allah, His deen, and sacrifice all of our desires for the sake of Allah so that we may be successful. Otherwise, we will not be successful. The success was given to the Sahaba because they were righteous, they were truthful, they were sincere in their worship and in their belief. And without that same sincerity, without that same commitment, we are not going to be able to be successful. Allah will not give us success. And Allah's promise is always true. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us to engage in this sacrifice, to help us in reducing the influence of our desires in our lives, our nafs, to help us and our families strive for a better life, for a life of righteousness and piety and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And may Allah help all of the Muslims around the world who are suffering, and may Allah unite this ummah, unite the ummah so we may be successful. Only when we are together holding on to the rope of Allah will we be successful. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم اغفر لي ذنوبي وافتح لي أبواب رحمتك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.